आ गही दाम शुनीदन जिस कदर चाहे बिछाए मुद्दा अनका है अपने आलम तकरीर का. Ghalib is extremely difficult to understand on good days, but when he writes like this, it is extremely difficult to figure out what he's trying to say. And that might be the case with most of you who are watching, where you want to understand Urdu poetry, but you don't know where to start and you don't know how to go about it. So, in this video, I'm going to present 3 simple steps that will help you improve your Urdu poetry, whether you're trying to understand it or whether you're trying to write it, and it will take it to the next level. Let's try to break this down before I go to the steps. This sher is from Ghalib's first ghazal, the famous first couplet of which is Naqsh faryadi hai kiski shokhi tahreer ka, कागजी है पैरहन हर पै करे तस्वीर का. एंड देन आ गही दाम शुनीदन जिस कदर चाहे बिछाए मुद्दा अनका है अपने आलम तकरीर का. आ गही दाम शुनीदन. Shunidan is a new word that he comes up with. Actually, it is a root word in Farsi or Persian, but it's not used colloquially. It's not used in your routine lives, but it just means to be able to hear or to hear. So when Ghalib says Agahi, awareness, daam shunidan jis qadar chahe bichhaye, awareness can try to lay its traps of speech as much as it wants, which means that you can try to understand me, or your awareness or your consciousness can try to understand me as much as it wants. Muddan ka hai apne alam takreer ka. The basis or the subject of what I am saying remains elusive to you. It is like this mystical creature. Anka is considered a mystical creature, a mythical creature, in the form of a phoenix or in the form of a bird, in simpler terms, that cannot be caught or sometimes cannot be seen. So what he's saying is that I know that you can try to understand me as much as possible, but what I'm trying to say will always escape you. Now that doesn't give us a lot of hope, and Ghalib is one of those poets who knows that he is difficult to understand, and he takes pride in that. But as a beginner or an intermediary, how are we supposed to understand what he's trying to say? What are different ways that you can improve your understanding of Urdu poetry, listen to it better, understand it better, and maybe even write it better? So let's start with the first step that has helped me a lot to understand Urdu poetry better, and that I will call immersion. Immersion is a pretty basic concept, and the idea is that you put yourself into everything around that subject. So if it's poetry, then you are just constantly listening to poetry, whether that is in the form of songs, whether that is in the form of videos, whether that is in the form of constantly reading poetry and trying to understand what each word means. Now, I'm going to link some videos in the description here by one of my favorite Urdu critics, Shamsur Rahman Farooqi, and you will listen to him and I'm sure you'll enjoy it if you enjoy Urdu poetry. But most of all, what I want you to do is to immerse yourself in it, which essentially means that you lose yourself in it. You just become present with what he is saying. You just try to understand, even if you don't know the meaning of a sher that he reads or any sher that you're reading, that's perfectly fine. Right now, in the first step, we want to be immersed completely into what is being said. So be absorbed, be engaged, and listen as much as you can. One other part of immersion is reading as much as possible. So even if your Urdu is weak, that's completely fine. But open Rekhta, read it. If you want to start with Roman English, it has an Roman English option. You go there and you read it, but then try to read it in Urdu and try to hover over basic words, and it will give you the meaning. It will also have a little sound option so you can try to hear how the word is pronounced. So the first step is immerse yourself in poetry. Read as much poetry as you can. Listen to it. Listen to ghazals. Jagjit Singh is a great way to start. And just feel the poetry. Try to experiment. Try to think of what you like to hear and what's something that you enjoy. And just have fun with it. After you've done that, we move on to the second step, which is recitation. Now, recitation is something that has helped me a lot in trying to improve my understanding of Urdu poetry. Even if I haven't been able to understand every word that a couplet says, recitation helps me a lot. Now, with most things, you might argue that there isn't a lot of difference between the first step, which is reading or immersing, and then the second step, which is reciting. But with poetry, there is. Because what you want to understand in poetry is that it is all a game of rhythm. It is an art of rhythm. And if you can understand or become one with the rhythm, you can understand poetry better, even if you don't know the meanings of the word. And so that essentially means that you shouldn't just read it, you should say it out loud. And you should train your tongue to speak the language, and to speak the language of Urdu, but also to speak the language of poetry. So it's extremely important that you start reciting it. So you open Ghalib's Diwan and you go to Naqsh Faryadi hai kiski shokhi hai tahreer ka, and try to stay with the words. Don't try to rush it. And say it once. Maybe you say it in a broken way, maybe you're not sure how to pronounce a word. Once again, go and look up the pronunciation and then read it. But try to perfect that one verse if you are very new. If you're at the intermediary level, then read through the ghazal. Kagazi hai pairahan kiski shokhi hai. And then go through the rest of the ghazal. Once you're done with that, I want you to try and memorize at least one couplet. It might be difficult for you, it might be easy for you, but memorize one couplet and just try to recite it. Try to recite it without the text and try to feel the rhythm. Try to feel how it flows, try to understand its rhythm, its melody, because all poems have melody. And once you do that, in the process of recitation, I'm sure that when you look up the pronunciation, you will end up looking what this means. I mean, think about it. We listen to songs, and the only reason we remember songs so perfectly is because they have a melody. If we were just reading them, we wouldn't be able to memorize them, we wouldn't be able to recite them, and we wouldn't be able to understand its meaning and enjoy them. So if you really want to enjoy poetry, if you want to understand it, and if you want to get better at writing it even, start with immersion and then move on to recitation. And then for the third step, and this is also an important one, we go on to understand the technical aspects of poetry. And that means that once you've given yourself enough exposure and experience with immersion and with recitation, I now want you to move on to researching a bit about what makes a good couplet. I will again drop some resources in the description, but I want you to do some research on your own as well. Go to some websites, go to Google, look up Frances Pritchett. I'm gonna link her website in the description as well. Look up what a meter is, look up what a beher is, look up what wazn is, and slowly try to make sense of how a couplet comes together in a technical way. And by now you will already have some idea of melody and beher, even if you don't know the specifics, because it's all about hearing and speaking. So if you've gone through the immersion state and if you've gone through the recitation state, you will know the beher when it comes in front of you. You will be able to understand it better. It's a complicated art. Some would say it's a complicated science, but start small. Start by looking up some videos. I'm going to try and put up some videos on meter and beher soon as well. But there are great resources other than me as well on the internet. So go and knock yourself out. And number 4, this is the most important, have fun. Enjoy. Don't make it a burden. There are so many things in life that are already a chore, that are already difficult to do. So don't think of poetry as a burden. Do it because you enjoy it and because you really want to have a go at it. Write as much as you can if you want to. Share as much as you can. Listen as much as you can. And then obviously try to understand the technical aspects. And most of all, have fun. I hope to see you in a video soon. And I hope that by the time we meet again, you will have at least started to immerse yourself in poetry.